Alright, man, peace. So, brothers, this is going to be another entry into the series Paternity Tests Should Be Mandatory. It's been a while since I touched on this topic, but it's always pertinent. Why is that? Because brothers are constantly getting involved in a lot of these ridiculous situations. Because unfortunately, oftentimes brothers can be bedazzled. They can be confounded by a very beautiful woman who speaks nice to them initially. That is the nature of the woman in general. I mean, the woman in general is very charming when she wants to be. Women are beautiful, but you also have to keep in mind that all pleasure has to be placed within a certain realm, within certain parameters, so that you don't allow yourself to get caught up in any bullshit. Because what always happens is that after a while, once the woman starts to get too comfortable or too accustomed to the person that she's with, no matter how good looking or charming or affluent he is, she's going to start to act up, because the woman is an agent of chaos. And if you happen to have impregnated that woman, that oftentimes can expedite the emergence of that chaotic persona within the woman, because she feels like, oh, I have him now. The two main events that are going to precipitate the woman's agent of chaos persona coming forth even faster than you may have thought is if you marry a woman too quickly, or if you impregnate them too quickly. Because for all intents and purposes, the female understands that in this society, she owns the man once those two things occur. Well, in the case of this story right here, this female that you see on the screen happens to have been impregnated by a man when she was 18, and she's going to acknowledge and admit that she was sleeping with 4 different men at the same time. Once again, brothers, a lot of you guys get caught up dealing with these little thotties. Please understand that if you lay down with a woman and she has no problem with you being unprotected, and you guys don't even know one another, that means that is modus operandi for her. That is her protocol, to just lay down willy-nilly with dudes and allow them to put that raw dog up in them. You're opening yourself up not only for possible paternity problems, but also STDs. Please keep that in mind. So anyway, they're going to talk about this case, and I'm going to chime in.
Plaintiff Danette Laurent says when she was 18 years old, she was having sex with the defendant, along with 3 other men. Danette claims when she got pregnant, she did not know who the father was.
Now, brothers, did you hear that? The narrator stated that when this female got pregnant, she had no idea who the father was. So not only was she sleeping with 4 different dudes, she was sleeping with all 4 without protection. She could care less about her own life or the lives of those 4 men. So what does that mean? That means you have to care about your own life. You have to care about your own life. All right? You have to vet these females. That's why I state that when you deal with the woman, the modern day woman in this society, she's pretty much on lifetime probation. But there's a certain period where you get to know the woman. You see how she conducts herself in times of adversity, how she treats you, how she treats herself, how she treats her family. If you happen to be dealing with a woman that has a child, how does she speak to the child? Does she have loving and caring and nurturing for the child, or does she treat the child with disregard? When you guys go out to eat, how does she treat the wait staff? If you guys were to get into a taxi or an Uber, how does she treat the driver? Things of that nature you have to pay very close attention to. Very close attention. Because after a while it becomes more and more difficult for the female to hide who she really is. But just getting back to the point, the main thing is that we know who we really are as men, because we're the only ones that we could change. We can't change another person, brothers. You can't change the personality of the woman that you're with. You can't change the personality of the people that you're around. You can only adjust yourself. So that's what we have to concentrate on. Point being is this: the so-called defendant in question is just as culpable as she is for all of this confusion.
So she petitioned the court for a paternity test. Defendant Thomas Anderson says after he and Danette had a one-night stand, he never saw her again. 13 years later, Thomas claims he received a letter while he was in prison saying he was the father of Danette's son. So he's eager to know the truth today.
All rise. This court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Craig Mathis presiding. You may now be seated.
Let me hear from you.
Okay, I petitioned this court for a paternity test in order to see if Thomas is the father of my 15-year-old son. We started talking. Well, not really talking, but we knew each other in 2001 through a mutual friend. And in 2002, I found out that I was pregnant.
Hey, brothers, when she says that we knew each other through a mutual friend, that most likely was one of the guys that she was fucking other than him. Because she was most likely nothing but a little thotty that some guy knew and he put his homeboy on. That's another thing. Be very, very careful with those random hookups, man. Be careful dealing with these thotties. A thotty is like eating too much fast food. Eventually, you're going to have a heart attack.
So I let Thomas know that he could be the potential father because I was also sexually involved with 3 other guys. I was 18, had my own place, had a job, thought I was grown.
No, you thought you were a hoe. That's what you thought you were. You were out on your own at 18, living in your own apartment. You had a quote-unquote job. You thought you were a hoe. You most likely left your parents' house that young, either because you could not deal with their rules and restrictions, or maybe the household was too chaotic or too haphazard that you were coming from, and you were looking to find some type of order on your own. Once again, brothers, these women out here, they need guidance, man. A lot of them are mentally ill, psychologically disturbed because of all of these wild ideologies that they adhere to, feminism and liberalism and basically thelima, do what thou wilt. Most of these females, they're in drastic need of psychological evaluation and assistance, but they can't get it because the so-called black man has not been trained. Brothers have to be trained on how to deal with these women so that they don't become a part of the problem. Right now, the so-called black man is a big part of the problem because he has embraced simposity, man. He's embraced all this simp shit. So basically, he's become a male liberal. He believes that the woman could do whatever she wants because all he's thinking about is the random pussy that he can get. But you have to understand that your bad decisions affect everybody else because you're bringing confused children into the world. These confused children are being raised by confused women. So, it is what it is.
So, Thomas told me that he could not be the father. He was not the father. That he had someone that he was dating in Texas. So I just let
He
it
told
be.
you that when? Right
After
after you were pregnant, you called him?
Yes.
And you said he might be.
Yes. I said you could be.
Did you call the other guys and
Yes.
say the same thing?
Yes, sir.
And he immediately said, I have a girlfriend, so it's not mine?
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
That was his way of saying, bitch, don't bother me. It's over. Don't try to pin that shit on me because I'm not having it. That's all it was about. And she was young. She was scared. So she allowed herself to become intimidated. But after a while, she said to herself, you know what? This is too much of a responsibility for me to deal with on my own. I'm going to have to really put the hammer down on somebody. But initially, she was so frightened. She didn't know what to do because, once again, the liberal female in general does not think about repercussions for her actions. So she thought she could just fuck a whole bunch of dudes with no rubber on, no condom on, and nothing was going to happen. And when shit got really real, really quick, she didn't know what to do. So homeboy, the so-called defendant, figured that she was trying to run a game on him and, you know, he just shoot her away. And she conformed to it because she was scared.
You sure he said that?
Yes.
Where did you say that?
What did I say then?
Yes.
Okay, whatever you want to say.
You didn't say that doesn't make sense?
No.
You didn't remind him of what happened?
No.
She might have forgot what happened. Who the hell knows? A lot of these broads, you know, especially when they're having sex with a whole bunch of different dudes, they high and drunk. She might not have even been quite sure what the hell happened. Brothers, once again, you have to protect your own estate. Your estate is your life. You have to be responsible for yourself and the female that you're living with because you cannot expect these females to make good decisions. Most of them are just, they're just like feathers blowing in the wind. They're like leaves blowing in the wind, man. They just hope everything's going to work out well for themselves. They create this fake persona so that they could be mildly functional in the workplace. Other than that, most of them are just batshit crazy. They're functioning nut jobs. The vast majority of these females are. Why is that? Because the vast majority of them are liberal. Are there exceptions to the rule? Of course there are. Just like there are needles in haystacks. It's just extremely rare.
Maybe maybe she could have said, I know someone said, yeah, what was that girlfriend that night?
Yeah.
Did you just, oh, okay. Yeah. Even though it involves a child, I'm just going to let you say something that makes absolutely no sense, and I'm not going to say a word, but, oh, okay. Hung up.
That's before she realized and understood the financial implications. She pretty much was just trying to see if she could find somebody to play house with after she found out she was pregnant. That's why she was so meek about it.
And then 15 years later, just dawned on me. That didn't make sense.
Yeah, because she said to herself, damn, I only have about 3 more years of child support. Let me see if I can make up for lost time.
So what happened after this man told you that?
So I decided I'll be mom and dad.
And that's a normal refrain for many of these modern day liberal females. They claim that they're quote unquote mom and dad, whatever that means. And brothers have to be very cognizant when you hear females say those type of things, that they're mom and dad. What does that mean? That means that they have no respect, no regard for the masculine principle, because they feel like they can replace you. Oftentimes, they cannot even be appropriate mothers. But supposedly, they can be both mom and dad, allegedly. All right? You have to listen to the woman when she speaks. Listen to them. Most of these modern day liberal females are narcissists. Well, let me correct that. Most of these females are narcissists. All of these liberal females are narcissists. They're all self-worshipful. All of them. Self-aggrandizers. And nowadays, most of them are hedonists, meaning what? They're excessively lustful. Always trying to see who they can hop into bed with because they can do whatever they feel like doing. Allegedly, supposedly.
Then 5 years later, I got 2 of the guys tested. That was negative. And I let it go.
Tell me, when you called them, what were those conversations like?
They were willing to take the test.
All right, and they took the test and negative?
Yes.
All right, did you speak with him again after that?
No. I didn't speak with him until 2016, but I did a test in 2014 through Child Support Agency. They located him. He was in prison, and they gave him 3 days to take up or sign a paternity acknowledgement, stating that he wanted the paternity test done. He couldn't get that signed in time, so they automatically named him the father.
By default?
Yes.
Now, brothers, did you hear that? She sent him a paternity test while he was imprisoned. But because he did not respond back in time, they named him the father by default. Once again, they're looking for someone to be held accountable, to be held responsible for the maturation of that bond, known as the child. All people in this society are viewed as commercial assets, as financial assets. Your job basically is to act as the proverbial mother hen sitting on top of the egg. The egg contains money in it. When they look at you, they don't look at a flesh and blood human being. They look at how much you're worth based off how much work you're expected to accomplish in your lifetime. Okay? So, when someone is a child, all the way up until working age, we need someone to invest in that bond and act as a security for that bond. In case it does not reach maturity, we can tax that person. That's why they stress so-called child support so much. They went to the lengths of tracking this person down in prison and telling him that by default, we're going to hold you financially responsible for this bond because we cannot find anybody else who fits the description.
So when he got out in 2016, he contacted us. Yes. And he contacted my son and I, and they've been talking on the phone back and forth, but they hadn't met in person yet because of the test. I didn't want his feelings to be hurt or Thomas's feelings to be hurt.
Man, please, you were not concerned about anybody's feelings. The reason why you went to such a great extent to track him down is because you wanted to make sure that you could tax him before your son's age was going to become so old that you would not be able to get any reverse child support. That's all this is about. This is a financial issue. It has nothing to do with you being concerned with the welfare of your son, as you've already stated. You think that you have what it takes to be both the mother and the father, as most liberal females do. Once again, brothers, in this society, they view the man as a drone. Your job is to inseminate or impregnate the queen bee. After you inseminate them, you're really no longer relevant to them. Once again, they have the mindset of a female praying mantis. Once they're finished engaging with you in copulation, they bite your head off and let you bleed out. You have to understand that. I cannot stress that enough. That's why you have to make sure that you get to know the female that you're with, inside and out, very thoroughly, her family, etc. Get an understanding of how her mother is, because the mother is going to have a huge impact on the daughter in regards to her views on life. If her mother is a man hater or a mega feminist, odds are so is the daughter. She's just acting right now.
If the test was negative.
All right, some things in the law or policy or whatever the case might be just have never rang fair to me.
Yeah.
Well, brother, the reason why they don't ring fair to you is because the law is not based on fairness. The law is based on the collection of debt. Everyone that's in prison is a debtor. It's not even because you necessarily were involved in embezzlement or thievery or what have you. When you commit a crime, whatever it is, whether it's rape or murder, etc., there's a financial amount that's placed on that crime. And either you can offset it in the form of payment of bond or you cannot. That's why you're not going to see too many billionaires that go to prison for murder. For the most part, when you see billionaires go to prison, it's over white-collar crimes. Things like embezzlement, where they cannot offset the amount of money that they owe, both to the court and also to whoever it is that is bringing the allegation against them. All crimes are commercial crimes. All crimes are commercial crimes.
I have to go with the law.
Yeah.
But this, for example, that's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair at all, but that's the law in some states and obviously in your state. Let me hear from you, sir.
I met Annette. I didn't know how many sexual partners she had. I had only met her one day. A friend of mine asked me to come to Covington, so I decided to go. Me and Annette had a one-night stand, and I haven't seen her since. I had no way of getting in contact with her because I didn't have a cell phone at the time. 13 years later, at the time I thought her name was Pumpkin.
I bet you did think her name was Pumpkin. Every time you want a slice, she lets you have one. That's for damn sure.
Her name?
Yeah, I didn't know her
You
name.
didn't even know her real name?
So 13 years later.
He didn't need to know her real name. When you're dealing with these thoughts, these little thotties out here, they're giving all type of fake name. Peaches and Pumpkin and all this other shit. Why is that? Because making up a fake name helps them cope with being big sluts. It allows them to say, I didn't do that. Peaches did that. I didn't do that. Pumpkin did that. It helps them look in the mirror and still view themselves with a certain level of respect.
13 years later, I'm in jail and I receive a letter.
Was it a one-night stand? How many times?
Twice.
Pardon?
Twice.
So in other words, he had sex with you twice, so it was not a one-night stand. This dingbat, he probably had sex with her twice in one night. And in her pea-brain mind, that means that it wasn't a one-night stand. Come on, man.
Twice. Go ahead.
After the one night, I had never saw her again. So 13 years later, I'm in prison. I receive a letter stating that I'm the father of the next child. It says Danette Laurent. And my mind is not ringing true because I don't know who Danette Laurent is. I always knew her as Pumpkin, so I'm like, who's this paperwork for? So as I read further into the paperwork, which I have here, it gives me basically her life story, from her social security number to the job she had, to the other people that she has on child support, to so on and so forth. So I did my research. It did ring true to me. I did go to Covington. So immediately, they made me the father by default. I didn't send the paperwork in a time, a lot of time. I was in the blocks at the time. They made me the father by default, so I became my own lawyer. I started doing research. I started finding any type of way I had to take money out of my account. I have that as well in black and white to get the process rolling. I had to send different petitions. The petition didn't have to come to court. So after about 6 months, it took me 6 months of time and money and emphasis. They finally put me in court. I get transported to the court. I sent Danette a letter like a week before. Danette didn't show up in court.
Ma'am, is this true? You failed to show up for one of the court dates?
I did.
Why?
Because it was a week before, and I didn't get the
Week
letter.
before what?
Week before the court date.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't get the letter until maybe 4 days before the court date. There's no way I could have went to Louisiana.
In 4 days?
No.
Definitely not. Not until you got your game plan together. You were still kind of shocked that he went through all that rigmarole to try to fight the default verdict that he was the father and that he would be responsible for the paternalistic aspect of maintaining your child financially. Because we already know you're the mother and the father, so you already have the parenting covered because you're a man and a woman in one.
I didn't have the resources to go at that time.
All right, go ahead. So she did a no-show.
Didn't show
and then
up.
what?
So I get out of jail maybe a year later. The first thing I did when I got out of jail was contact Dylan. Dylan did that. I feel like if any responsible man, if you have a son, then you need to be there for him. You need to stand up and take that responsibility. So that
I agree with that, but you know what, brothers? A lot of so-called black men, they want to look good for television, and they say things like that. And I'm not saying that this brother's not sincere. I'm sure that he's very sincere, because by his account and also by the plaintiff's account, he is trying to be in that young man's life. But the responsibility starts when you decide to lay down with that woman, man. And I'm being dead serious. This is by no means trying to be over-righteous or anything of that nature. I'm already on record of stating people are going to do what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, you have to know the difference between a wife and a concubine. You're not going to know whether or not you have a wife for many, 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 many moons, man, many months. All right, you have to be with a woman hard body for years if you know whether or not she's worthy to be the person that's going to incubate your child. It's going to gestate your child. It takes a very long time. And if you're just dealing with the chick to get your thing off and she's a concubine, then you have to conduct yourself accordingly. You have to make sure that you protect yourself and also her, because you have to make decisions both for yourself and that female. Because once again, the woman, man, that's a child with titties, man. People get mad when I say that. I don't give a shit. Women are beautiful. Everybody knows that who has their head screwed on straight. But you also have to be very cognizant of the understanding that the woman by nature is bugged out of her damn mind. All right? They're bugged out of their fucking minds. And they're agents of chaos. And you do have to be a moderator. You have to be damn near chaperone for them a lot of times. Now, on the flip side, the woman has gifts that you can't replicate, that the man doesn't have. But when you're dealing with them, you have to know in what capacity you're going to deal with them. Because at the end of the day, you can talk about how I'm going to step up to my responsibilities all you want. That child, that son is 13, 14 years old. So he's already partially formed as a person.
So that's what I did. I sent him money one time. I talked to him on a regular basis. At least I try to make contact with him. I call him at least 2 times out the week. I know it's kind of hard because I don't know if I am the father, and I didn't want to really just, barge into his life, being that I may not be the father. But I would like the court to know that if I am the father, I would like to stand up and be the man that I'm supposed to be. And if I'm not the father, I'll still be in his life and support him in any way needed.
Brothers, let me say this. If you ever reach a point in your life where there are allegations that you're the father of a child, don't feel like you have to be compelled to be involved in a child's life that's not yours just because a woman is confounded by her own actions and misdeeds. It's up to you.
One observation I want to make, and it kind of goes to the stereotypes that you hear about guys who have been involved in criminal activity or on the street or in prison or whatever the case. The stereotype or the basic assumption is that they don't take care of their kids, they don't love their kids, they don't want their kids. Yeah, some drug addicts might do that, but the average guy on the street, drug dealers, other guys involved in criminal activity, other guys in prison, the overwhelming number, believe me, I know a lot of criminals, I know a lot of folks who've been involved, I know a lot of guys in prison. The overwhelming majority of them want to be good fathers to their children. Either they don't know how.
Hey brothers, you heard that? Judge Mathis stated that many of these cats that are locked up, that are in prison, they want to be fathers, they want to be good fathers. But one of the main reasons why there seems to be a stumbling block for them is that they don't know how. That's why it's very, very important that the so-called black man take back over the household. And many times cats come in the comments, they say, well, a lot of these women won't let us raise the children. Well, that is why I stress that you take your time in impregnating the woman and you get to know the woman that you're dealing with. It's very, very important that you're honest with yourself and with her. And to be quite frank with you, a lot of cats out here are not truly mentally or spiritually qualified to be impregnating a woman in this environment. Because this is Babylon, man. I cannot stress that enough. So if you're going to try to inseminate a woman in Babylon, you better make sure that you have an understanding, a mutual understanding of how the child's going to be raised, and what the ordinances are going to be, what the hierarchy is going to be. If you have not been able to reach that mutual understanding with the woman, you're setting yourself up for failure. I mean, just thinking about it right now, there was a man who was in the bloodline of Christ by the name of Zerubbabel, whose name literally meant sown in Babylon, because he was born and raised during the time that Israel was sojourning or were in captivity in Babylon. And he was heavily involved in leading the nation back into the land. But that's a whole other video for another day. That's a whole other issue for another day. Point being is this: when you decide to become involved in a relationship with a woman on a serious level and you impregnate her, you have to understand that there's going to be so much outside stimuli that affects the woman. The woman is like an antenna. She just receives everything. It's very difficult for her to understand what to stop from permeating into her head and what to allow in. It's the job of the man to act as the moderator. It's not your job to follow the woman. You have to lead the woman. And if the woman does not want to follow you, no problem. Have a nice day. That's a concubine, and might not even be that. But when you come with these sob stories about how your woman will not let you raise the child, that's almost something that you're just going to have to come to terms with, because you erred in choosing the woman. So we have to understand the gravity of that situation, who we choose to lay down with for the intentions of procreation. It's totally different. You meet some chick at the bar, whatever, and you're just trying to get your thing off. As long as you understand you're dealing with a concubine, then you conduct yourself accordingly. You're dealing with a wife, you have to know what you're doing. You can't play any games with yourself or with the situation at hand. It's very, very important. I cannot stress that enough.
Or there's some other extenuating circumstances in prison, whatever the case. And so I wanted to point that out so that folks don't think all the guys behind bars are bad fathers or would otherwise be bad fathers. All the guys on the street doing what they think they need to do to survive. I'm not saying that's what they need to do. Doing what they think they need to do to survive are not all bad fathers. So
now, brothers, did you hear what Judge Mathis just stated? He said that most of the guys out there on the street, the brothers out there on the street, are doing what they think they need to do to survive. Why is he making that distinction? Because there's a difference between what somebody actually needs to do as opposed to what they tell themselves they need to do. A lot of brothers try to justify their simplicity and the part they play in destroying their own people by saying, I need to do this. And a lot of times the options that a man believes that he has are based off of what he's taught in his childhood. That's why I make many of these videos. The so-called black man has to do a much better job of imparting and implanting into his child's mind that they have a lot of options. They just have to make the right decisions. It's very important. And it's not just about sitting them down and talking to them and saying this, and that. It's also about helping them plan out exactly what their road is going to be. Because once again, everybody out there has a gift or gifts. It's just a matter of how much you believe in yourself. And a lot of so-called black children do not believe in themselves. They spend more time worrying about the gifts that other people have. And they learn that from their parents. Because our people in general spend a lot of time worrying about what other people have as opposed to the gifts that they have. And that is what a quote-unquote hater is. A hater is just somebody who spends most of their time, too much of their time, worrying about what somebody else has or what somebody else is doing rather than what they have, what they should be trying to improve upon, and what they should be doing. And that literally is the difference between failure and success.
So I'm glad that you are here to testify to that. And you began in his life when? Presuming and
Soon as I found out about it.
Okay.
Soon as I found out.
All right, well, we're going to find out ourselves. And I'm glad to hear that if you're the father, you'll be fully engaged. And what you have said makes sense. Don't barge quite into his life wholeheartedly until you know. Glad to hear that. How's your son doing otherwise? You can go and get the results from me,
He's
please.
doing great.
He's doing great. You raise him as a single mother?
He has a stepfather.
Okay.
Hey, brothers, you hear that? Judge Mathis asked the plaintiff. He said, did you raise him as a quote-unquote single mother? She was forced to finally acknowledge that the son has a stepfather. Why did it take her so long to say that for? Because she was too busy exalting herself and exulting in the notion that she did it all by herself, or that she's in court to try to force the defendant to be a father to his child. That's not why she's there. She's there to tax his ass. That's it. That's the only reason why she's there.
Okay. Been in his life how many years? 10 years? All right, good. Because that's the essence of it. He's been a father as well.
Yes.
He's been a father all along.
Yes.
What, in the last 10 years? And is that true, the things he said?
Did you see how Judge Mathis made sure that he forced her to acknowledge that the stepfather has been a father for the last 10 years? Because she was trying to cut him out of the narrative.
About him showing some type of commitment to fatherhood,
Yes,
and you are pleased at what he has shown?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, great, great, great. Because you're the father, and you're the continue. Good luck. Great, great, great. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. Have a good day, guys.
This over with. I'm glad you understand.
Of course you're glad that he's the daddy, because now you're going to tax his ass, and you can tax him while he's smiling because he's happy to have a son. Either way, you were there for your money. But anyway, that's basically it on that, brothers. I do realize that I do have to pick up where I left off with this paternity test should be mandatory series, because this is one of the more relevant series, especially pertaining to the so-called young black man. So peace.